Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am super excited about today's episode because if you are interested in learning more about Photoshop, if you're wondering if Photoshop is the right editing software for you, but maybe you're overwhelmed, you don't even know how to get started, you know nothing about Photoshop at all, this episode is for you. Today, I'm going to go into what is Photoshop, how can you get it? Like I will talk about the subscription I use for Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to talk about Adobe Camera Raw and JPEG and how it works a little differently in Photoshop and what you can expect there. And then I'm going to go over the basic tools. Like, again, this is not going to I'm not going to dive deep into anything specific in Photoshop. I'm just giving you a broad overview of everything in Photoshop. If we haven't met yet, hi, I am Kayla Brent. I'm a motherhood photographer and founder of Mom Photography School, where I teach moms how to take gorgeous everyday photos of their family. Along with my membership, Mom Photography School, I also have courses. In one of my courses, Editing Essentials, I have a whole lesson about why I choose Photoshop over Lightroom. And this is a very unpopular opinion. Most photographers use Lightroom, and that's great. Lightroom just did not work well for me, and I did learn how to use it. I started off using Photoshop before Lightroom was a thing, and then I jumped into the Lightroom world, learned how to use it, but I found that I was always doing edits in Lightroom, but then I would have other edits that I would need to do in Photoshop. So I was using two tools when Photoshop can do everything Lightroom can do when it comes to editing, plus a ton more. So why use two different applications when I can just use one? So I use Photoshop all the time. I do not use Lightroom at all for editing my professional photos taken with my fancy camera. So Photoshop and Lightroom are the two big Adobe editing softwares, and what we are going to be concentrating on is Photoshop because it's my favorite. So we need to go in how to download Photoshop. Photoshop now, it used to be that you had to go like buy a CD-ROM and like put it on your computer. They've made it a lot easier now. You can pay $10 a month. That's what I pay, like $9.99. And I get both Photoshop and Lightroom for that price. I'll have a link below. Go check that out. And it's really, really easy. You get both software. So if you're like most people and you like Lightroom better, that's great. You can play with it and figure that out. Or you might be like me and just use Photoshop. So I have Lightroom too. I just don't use it. So that is how you get it. You can go to the link below and it will take you to that subscription there and you can read about that. So let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop. And I am going to show you first one thing that happens in Photoshop is when you take a raw image, what happens when you drag a raw image in Photoshop and what happens when you draw a JPEG image. It kind of does two different things. So I want to show you that there. If you want to learn more about raw versus JPEG, go ahead and after you watch this video, go to my video talking all about raw versus JPEG and the difference there. That link is below. So if you have no idea what a raw file is, I'm going to give you a brief summary, but you can watch that video to really get deep down in it. But a raw file is just like the biggest file that there is. It has all the information on there. So that file is the file that it's the easiest to edit, to save. Like if you got something underexposed or overexposed, it was too bright, too dark, you can save them the most. So big file, huge file, JPEG, small file. That's all I'll go into there. Watch the video and I go into more detail about that. But Photoshop opens up those two things very differently. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and I will show you what that looks like now. Okay, so I have Photoshop down here, and this is kind of what it'll look like whenever you open it up. It'll have images. These are images that I took for a sweet family. And I am over to the side here. I have two images. There they are. I'm going to take this one. This is a raw image, ARW. Raw will be, depending on what kind of camera you have, it'll be called something different. Some are RAW, some are JPEG, some are NEF or Nikon. So I'm just going to start off by dragging a JPEG. It'll do what you would probably think should happen. It just opens it up, and here's a picture of my son in the hospital. It's the best thing ever. And there's how that happens. Okay, so it just opens up and you can get to work in here, and I'll go over that. Now I want to show you the difference when you open up a raw image. I'm going to take this here. So I have my raw image. It opens up in a totally different screen, and this is called Adobe Camera Raw. Now, I have found that Adobe Camera Raw looks a ton like Lightroom, and it operates much the same. You have your main tools, your little sliders, dials over here that you can use, and I can go in here and I can edit and get this image exactly how I want it. It has the histogram up here, and Adobe Camera Raw is what I do 95% of my editing. I do it right here to get things the way that I want them to look. And so right now I'm just playing with these dials here. You can white balances here, exposure, contrast, all of your basic edits are here. Now there's also more detailed things that I will not go into, but there's the curves, the details, all of that is here too. You can play with the hue, saturation, all of that here. If you want to, for instance, the blue, we can change the color of the blue. Obviously, I need that one. And you can see the difference there. There's tons of options, but I mainly want to show you with this that Adobe Camera Raw opens, or raw images open in Adobe Camera Raw. They will not just open in Photoshop like a JPEG. Before then, again, go watch the raw versus JPEG, and this will make more sense. I recommend you watching that one before you watch this one. So here's this here, and I'm gonna go ahead and open it. And now we will see it will open to the same screen that the other JPEG image was in here. Okay, and so it already has those edits that I made. It's brighter. And you know, for me, I could save this image right now and it would be great and good to go. And the JPEG opens like this. Now, something that I want to say about the JPEG, I like the way Adobe Camera Raw, all the slides are there, the exposure, the white balance, it looks very much like Lightroom. So you can go to filter Adobe Camera Raw, and that can pop up and you can edit this. Even though it's a JPEG image, you can edit it in Adobe Camera Raw and it'll do the same things. Of course, JPEG images are smaller. You may or may not be able to save it and do as much with it, but the sliders there, you can still mess with the exposure and all of that. So here was before and after. Even though it's a JPEG image, I can still open up a JPEG in Adobe Camera Raw. And there is that. So that was the big overview of JPEG versus camera, or a raw image. It opens up in Camera Raw and then it comes in here and everything is the same. I want to go over the main tools that I use. And I'm not going to go, again, not deeply into any of these, but here are your tools over here. And if you ever like have a tool and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to, I've been doing something and I can't get back to just a regular tool. Well, it's called the Move tool, and you can just hold your mouse over it and it'll tell you what it is, give you a little example of what it does, but it's shortcut V on your keyboard, and you can always just press V and it comes back and it's just kind of like, okay, good, reset, awesome. So here are your tools here. The most common ones I use, of course, are the Move tool, the crop tool I use that in Camera Raw more than anything, but you can use it here as well. That will crop your image however you want to. And then there's other tools for healing and that kind of thing, getting rid of blemishes and bumps and those sorts of things this is what I use Photoshop for a lot, because I photograph children and my own children, and it seems like every time a photo session comes up, whether it's my family or somebody else, someone has a boo-boo on their face, and I can get rid of those really easily. And of course, here is the perfect little baby skin, so there's nothing that I really need to edit out here, but there's those tools there. And I will show you one of that I use a lot is the patch tool. Let me see if I can find like a blemish on him here. I don't know what this is, and it's not normally something I would edit out, but I'm using the patch tool. You take it, you circle it, and then you take it and drag it to a texture that is the texture that you want it to be, and boom, like it is gone. And again, this is not stuff I would normally edit out, especially for a baby. These are very minor things. but just to show you how great it looks and how easy it is to do, I mean, it's that simple. So, and by the way, this image was taken with a point and shoot camera that is, I will link it below. I love this camera. I had him during COVID times. And so nobody could have the hospital. I couldn't hire a photographer, none of that. And normally I would have, because I had a C-section, and carrying something heavy, especially over something, I was over a bassinet here, is not good when you just had abdominal surgery. So I took this bad boy. And the reason I like this is it can shoot in manual mode and it can shoot in RAW, and it's very, very tiny. So this is my, I love this camera. And I also do a lot of video recording for YouTube channels, with the exception of this one, obviously, because I'm doing a screen recording. But this camera, again, shoots in manual mode, exactly the same as a camera like this one does. So I have a course on that, mastering manual mode. You can learn how to shoot manual, and it will shoot, it's the same for this as it is for that. So, and let's continue going on down here. This is the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool gets a lot of attention. It seems to be a favorite for everybody, it seems like. What it does is it clones objects. And for instance, I'm going to do a very drastic example here. I'm going to take this W, and when I'm hitting Option on a Mac, and then you click. And then what happens, I'm going to make my little brush bigger. You can do that by going up here, and I'm going to take the W, and look, I can get rid of the B and go over it with the W. So like that. And of course this isn't perfect, but I mean, how cool, quick, and easy was that? And I can make it WWW if I wanted to. Of course, that looks a little off, but just so you get how the clone tool works. Of course, we have things here, sharpening, and the burn tool to make shadows darker, and the text tool if you wanted to add text, and then there's other things down there. But those are the main ones I use. The move tool, the patch tool, the clone tool, the brush tool, which is B, and it's here. The brush tool I use a lot for editing skin tones. So for instance, say if my son's cheeks are often very, very red. He has sensitive skin. And I mean, I don't mean red like this. Sometimes they're red. And I will get the eyedropper tool, that is I here, to pick up the color. You'll notice it changes down here as I do that. But I'll pick up some of the skin that's a more of a natural color, and you can brush over it. Now that is extreme, but you can take the opacity and bring it down to say like 26, and you can see here that it's not as dramatic, and it just makes this a little bit more subtle. Again, I would not actually do this for that image, but there's how it looks there. And it does. It looks more like his natural skin that it is when he's not. He rubs into everything and it turns red. And these are things that hurt the mother's heart when you're taking photos. So those are the tools over there that I use the most. The biggest thing in Photoshop that differs from Lightroom that's a great thing are layers. This is your layers panel over here. So right now we just have the background layer. So if I do anything at all, it's there. I can undo by doing Command Z, but anything that I do, it's happening, and that just is how it is, kind of like in Lightroom. But what you can do in Photoshop is you can have layers. So I'm taking this background layer, I'm going to the plus sign here, and it's copying the background. So what I have a layer that I can work on independently, and I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to do the exact same thing by making his cheeks. I took that, I picked the color, I'm going to go over his cheeks, and look, I can, with this eye right here, I can turn it off and see what it looked like before and after. So this is like, it's non-destructive. I'm not messing up anything. Like if I do something, I can always have this background layer to go back to. And you can have multiple layers. You can have as many layers as that you want to have. But that is a big feature of of Photoshop. You can also change the opacity of the layers. So his cheeks, you'll see here, I can have it 0. I can have it however I want to, because that's the only thing, that's the only change that I had with this. So here I can write, I'm gonna change this color. I'm gonna change the opacity to 100 here, and the color to something extreme. Okay. And I'm just gonna put hi. And you can see here that I have it 100%, it looks like that. And then 0% looks like that. And in between. So that is how that works. And you can always delete it and go back. So that is the layers. And I have, this is another very, very, very popular panel, and it's called actions. And I have bought lots of actions over the years. Tons for newborns, tons for different things. You can sell greater than Gatsby. I've gone on action buying sprees throughout the years, but I want to show you, like, this is your action panel here. You can choose an action, and what happens is it's like a set of edits that go over every single one. So I'm going to choose, let me find a good action. I don't use actions a whole lot. And we'll see, I don't even know what this does. So you can play it, and it gives it a totally different look. So it's a set of actions. This one's called Sunshine, and it will give it a set of looks. So you can purchase actions on online. You can get any kind of look that you want, from the light and airy look to the dark and moody look, and obviously the sepia look here. But it helps to keep your images consistent. So there you have it. There is my overview of Photoshop, and I absolutely love Photoshop. I use it for everything. I use it both personally and professionally. If for nothing else, most of the time I take my images, especially my personal ones, I only use Adobe Camera Raw, and I will make the edits there, and you can save them from Adobe Camera Raw. Now, what are your next questions into Photoshop? That was just a quick overview of the tools and the layers and actions and the difference between RAW and JPEG files. Now, what else would you like to know? Please let me know down in the comments. I would love to make a YouTube video just for you. And make sure that you check out my next video by clicking wherever around me. Go check out that video and like and subscribe. I will see you next time, friends.